Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show, we have Jen Sanasi, David Morris, Zach Seward, and I'm going to throw this straight to Zach for our first story.
Mergers and acquisitions. Let's sing the mergers and acquisitions song. Crypto mergers and acquisitions. Coinbase acquires FairX to roll out a crypto derivatives offering at some point in the future. Now, 3 is a trend here, and that's why we're talking about it. First, we got FTX buying LedgerX, and Crypto.com made a similar acquisition late last year, causing observers to wonder if crypto derivatives, basically betting on the future price of certain crypto assets, is the future of big centralized exchanges here in the US. Notable development, interesting stuff. Of course, Coinbase is publicly traded, is probably the largest of the 3 there mentioned, and interesting to see them going this direction. I'm going to toss this to Naomi for her thoughts on the crypto derivative scene and this acquisition by Coinbase.
Yeah, I mean, it's always so interesting to see mergers and acquisitions like this happen because it's kind of an insight into how regulation in the US works, right? It's easier for a company to buy out a whole nother company than get a license on their own. That says something about the state of play here that perhaps is tilted in favor of people who are already in the industry and already set up. That's not really a good state of play if new people are at a disadvantage and there's people who have been in for a while, things are just running smoothly to them because perhaps they got in before regulation got so tight. So I thought that was just an interesting thing to look at. It's also interesting to see Coinbase go further in this direction, perhaps offering different products going forward. Gosh, like I just want them to offer the earn product. I just want to be able to stake things and earn interest, SEC.
Not going to happen.
But no, the SEC doesn't want us to be able to earn interest on our money. So instead, Coinbase is jumping through all kinds of other hoops and buying companies and trying to get like roundabout products that might do similar things, but probably won't even come close. It's interesting. I'm a little bit frustrated with crypto regulation in the United States, but I'll throw to you, David, for your thoughts.
Oh, I actually mostly had a question. Is this, when we talk about FTX, is this FTX US? Because I thought they were big on derivatives in their main platform.
Yes, I should have specified. Okay. It is FTX US, which finalized its LedgerX acquisition not too long ago.
Yeah, I guess all I have to say about this story is I'm going to be very interested to see how it develops because, regulators, and apologies to Naomi, but just in terms of the situation on the ground, regulators already not a fan of crypto in a lot of ways. And once you start looking at derivatives, I'm sure they're going to get even more antsy. So I'm not familiar with the intricacies of the regulatory regime here, but I would, if I'm looking at it from Coinbase or FTX's perspective, this is probably a bit of a roll of the dice, a little bit of like hoping they can actually get this through the gate and not have somebody stop them from doing it because obviously derivatives, very high risk. And also just, as a message to people who are thinking about using these products, very high risk, be sure you know what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Jen, did you already get in or are you on the queue?
I just have something quick, and then I saw Zach's hand go up before mine, so I'll just go quickly. Naomi, I completely agree with you. I think I said the same thing when FTX made that acquisition, and now we have Coinbase I can't speak English, acquiring FairX. And, they already are regulated with the CFTC. And so it just makes a ton of sense, I think, for these behemoth companies to get these little scrappy startups. I think FairX is quite young. I think they only launched in 2021, already getting acquired. And so I went on LinkedIn this morning and took a look at their team, and they have quite a skilled team. So I'm interested to see how much of the team Coinbase is going to retain and what they are going to do with those people. The team had a lot of experience in the traditional financial sector, and a lot of really interesting regulatory experience on their team. So it'll be interesting to see how Coinbase uses those skills and those people.
Yeah, I was going to just echo what Naomi said. I mean, I think in startup land, there's this concept of the acqui-hire, right? Where you acquire companies and you bring them in, you bring in the talent and you sort of absorb them into your existing company. Now, there's also sort of this concept of the acqui-hire of key regulatory licenses and from financial regulators here in the US. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We're probably also seeing an acqui-hire in terms of the talent that Jen alluded to, also kind of being wrapped into the fold. But it is interesting to see these big companies make a lot of money. They go on an acquisition spree. They purchase up some licenses so that they can again offer additional products to their users and keep them coming back for more of those sweet coins. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out and whether or not it'll get the blessing of regulators to go forward. All right, let's change gears. I think I'm tossing to David. Pick up the baton for me. What do you got?
So we have, it's a relatively minor little blip, but interesting in sort of a meta way. We have Bank of America releasing a report, sort of bullish on Solana, saying, we'll have a discussion about exactly what this means, but saying Solana could be the Visa of the digital asset world. I mean, it's interesting because it's a bank reporting on a crypto thing, and then it is also interesting because they get a little bit into some of the design trade-offs in Solana versus Ethereum. But Zach, we were talking about this before the show. You want to jump in with your thoughts here first?
I mean, I just think it's crazy to see in 2022 Bank of America research analysts talking about Solana, talking about Luna. We're going to see all sorts of like weird things that are being talked about by these Wall Street titans, and I'm still not used to it. We probably should be used to it at this time, but it's just striking to see them talk about this stuff. And I think again, the security trade-offs are mentioned, but also sort of the still nascent and somewhat experimental nature of these chains should be mentioned if it's not mentioned in this report, right? Solana has been hit with a number of sort of like degraded performance situations over the last few weeks where transactions are either stalled or choked up. And it doesn't always weigh on the price of this asset, but it certainly weighs on the ability for people to use these chains as they are intended to be used for financial applications that exist in a more decentralized fashion. So hope that's in there. I don't know if they got to that, but definitely worth mentioning when you look at, okay, it could be Visa one day, but recently it's a bit it's moving a bit choppily, and Solana has been hit with some degraded performance issues of late. So definitely worth mentioning that. But I'll toss it back down to you.
I saw Jen wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I have a question for you, David. Did you take a look at the research behind this research note? Because it felt like in the article when I was reading it was like a lot of information that we already know about Solana. And I would have loved to see if they compared Solana against other chains and what they took into account, because it seemed like in the article that they had spoken to someone from the Solana Foundation and said, okay, Solana could be the next Visa. But what did they compare Solana against?
So I was not able to find the original research report. Sometimes these have limited distribution and you have to sort of reach out and get them. And I didn't have time for that. But there was, the main comparison point seemed to be Ethereum. And they did talk about the scaling versus centralization trade-off, which, for people who aren't familiar, I'm going to speak in sort of broad terms here, but Solana has fewer validators and less sort of open participation in the validation process, as far as I understand it, than Ethereum and other design choices that can make it more vulnerable, but make it faster and give it more transaction speed. I'm not sure what other comparisons they were making, but what I'm interested in as well is, what's the business model for B of A to be commenting on this? I think to some extent it's just about like making sure they're staying relevant in the discussion, but also they are advising investors who are making choices. And I have to echo kind of what Zach said, that in some ways, I mean, we had Fidelity commenting on this stuff as far back as 2017, 2018. So these major players have been transitioning in for a while. But it does feel strange, especially because these things are so speculative and frankly so early in a lot of ways, that in some ways it almost feels like Bank of America is getting ahead of themselves in other places, and maybe even endangering investors to a certain extent by not emphasizing, because Zach, to my knowledge, they did not talk about the breakdowns. The other big thing that I saw was missing from at least the summaries was any discussion of whether Solana might be a security that could be intervened with by the SEC or something like that. That still feels like a somewhat unresolved question. But I saw somebody wanted to chime in. Yes, go for it, Naomi.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So Solana is a little bit different to Ethereum in that they co-locate their servers. So it's one of the ways that they can get things really fast and efficient is that because all of their machines like in the same place. So that's why a lot of people say, well, this is more centralized and we should have things geographically dispersed. If someone just wanted to shut off the internet to a country or just like a particular area, then that poses a risk to the system. So there are legitimate concerns there. I mean, it gets back to functionality as well. Though, and it's this age-old trade-off that we keep talking about in crypto. Moxie Marlinspike, the former CEO of Signal, had this great post the other day where he's talking about Web3 and how centralized is it really? And he kind of gets to the heart of this issue, this idea that we talk about these decentralized systems, but they tend to be pretty centralized, so we should be aware of that. I mean, I actually really I think there's a big role for centralization in a lot of this stuff because it does get eliminate a lot of friction. It makes things easier. We've seen that it's helped with scalability, and there's a lot more congestion on Ethereum. But you guys have brought up actually there's been some issues with Solana as well. So maybe it hasn't completely solved those problems. But the issue of centralization really is a big one when it comes to an asset that governments fundamentally do not like and want to shut down. And we've proven this throughout history that the government will go after competing currencies as large as possible. So the government throughout history has gone after any competing currencies and shut them down because they can, because they've always had a central point of failure. And the reason that Bitcoin was this incredible revolution was it was the first time in history we had a competing currency that couldn't be shut down because it was decentralized. And now we're going back into this hybrid world of, oh, let's have some trade-offs there and let's add more functionality and ease of use. And yes, that brings more people into the camp, which is super important. We want as many people as possible involved with these alternative systems, but it does pose a centralization point of failure, and that is a real risk. So I agree with you, David, and Steve the cat, who I see has joined us on the chat.
Yeah, we have a fifth host.
A fifth host, lot to
grumpy.
say. Something he agrees. Something is very fishy going on here. But I think, sorry, that's terrible pun. But I do think that there is a it's definitely something to keep in mind, this centralization of what trade-offs we are making and whether or not the SEC does indeed deem this to be a security. Like there are a lot of big questions there. If we're creating competing systems, we want them to be as robust as possible so they can't be targeted by people who don't like them. So just something to keep in mind. And throw it to you, Zach, for a wrap.
I will take it. I will wrap it. We're going to take a break, but when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about Kim Kardashian getting sued allegedly for pumping and dumping this thing called Ethereum Max. David's done some reporting on this. He's going to have some spicy takes. Can't wait. Stick with us. It's The Hash.
Hi, I'm Christine Lee.
Zach Seward.
I'm Michael Casey.
I'm Christy Harkin.
I'm Isaiah Jackson.
I'm Serena Lynn.
Hey, this is Will Foxley.
I'm Teresa Santos.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Lewitton.
Hi, I'm Dorian Wayne.
I'm Nicholas Day.
Hi, I'm Kevin Worth.
My name is Naomi Brockwell.
I'm Jordan Muthra.
Hi, I'm Galen Moore.
Hi, I'm Brad Count.
I'm Pete Paschal.
Hi, I'm Jen Sanasi. You're watching.
And you are watching.
And you're watching CoinDesk TV.
Welcome back to The Hash, and we're going to be diving into some interesting things going on with Wikipedia. So apparently a group of editors on Wikipedia, which is a free user-generated basically encyclopedia where anyone can write things in and edit and whatnot, a group of them have voted against classifying non-fungible tokens as a form of art, which has sparked all kinds of debates on crypto Twitter. They've decided to shelve the issue until a later date. And people are really angry because they're saying, well, Wikipedia is meant to kind of be this open encyclopedia. What right do Wikipedia editors have to define something as art or not art? So there's a lot of interesting things to dive into here. The first one is, I mean, there's a real question there about whether NFTs are art, right? This is actually a genuinely interesting conversation because really they're a token that represents ownership of something, and that something can be replaced and swapped out. And then, I mean, they're very interesting situation. Like, is the token the art, or is the thing that it's pointing to the art? Andy Warhol will probably say, like, life is art, everything is art. No one can define art. You know, it's all art. And so
that's my take on it.
Like, yeah, for sure. I mean, but at the same time, classifications are useful. And, especially when you have an encyclopedia that needs headings, like it is important to get classifications as close as possible to representing reality. Like it's a very interesting situation. But the other thing that I think is interesting about this is the role of Wikipedia and how open it is, whether they are indeed meant to be arbiters of truth, how open they are to people adding in their take, or is it like a tightly controlled narrative? There have been some controversies where things, that people have posted things and they've been deleted, and then people come back and said, you can't delete that. That is the truth. And people fighting against it saying, no, it's not the truth. It's a very interesting situation. So I'll throw to the group with both of those questions in mind. Jen, I'll throw to you to start off with. Actually, David, you had your hand up, so I'm going to throw to you.
Yeah, let me set the table here a little bit, because I've actually done quite a bit of reporting about this. My wife is a professional painter, so King Solomon's going to cut the baby in half. Some NFTs are art, some NFTs are not art. NFTs are a medium, not an expression. So, for example, I've written about procedural NFTs, which all of the work is contained in the code. I think that's a really important distinction. Some NFTs are just links to JPEGs. A lot of NFTs are procedural works that are built into the actual code of what's being stored, and that's a key distinction. But I think there is art in the sense of being an image, and there is art in the sense of being a creative effort of a certain kind that is exploratory. Bored apes, not art. A bored ape is an illustration. It's a profile pic. It serves a certain purpose, but it's not art in the sense that the discussion is going on here. Because just to be clear, what the Wikipedia editors are debating is who to include in a list of the highest art sales of all time. And in this case, PAC and Beeple do qualify under a broad definition. But again, just to put it right out there, Beeple, illustration, not art. But I will, having said that, hand it off to Jen and let her take her swipe.
We all gonna fight you, David. We all gonna fight you.
All of us were like, well, I mean, David, those are very definitive things to say about art that I think everyone has their own definition of. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about art, right? And I think the very fact that these Wikipedia editors have so much control over something that has been so integral to providing information in our culture is something that we're probably going to see change over the next few years. Like when I was reading this, I was thinking wow, could there be a decentralized Wikipedia? And what would that look like? And would the community still have these types of what? Yeah, I knew that there probably was, and I just don't know about it. So Naomi, please tell me about it after this. But and what would that look like? And would these debates be easier to solve when a group of people just can't decide on something? And so that's kind of where my head went. I do think that PAC and people have the right to be amongst the artists. I think what they did in 2021 was really groundbreaking for the art industry, and we've spoken about it a lot on this show, will change the direction in which art goes as we move into the future. And maybe the definition of art is going to change. And so, David, I just don't think you can be so definitive. But Naomi, I will pass it up to you to tell us about decentralized Wikipedia.
Well, Wikipedia is already somewhat decentralized, even though you do have certain editors. Kinda. People can contribute. So that's it's definitely not Encyclopedia Britannica, which was the definition of centralized. This is a closed system. We define what these things are. Wikipedia changed the landscape where they said, actually, we're opening this up. Anyone can edit and add. It's this real gray area. We haven't quite figured out how to solve this, because even when you have people contributing, you can have wars against what people have added, and some people can supersede the decisions of others. And then you have something called Everpedia, which has come about, and they basically allow you to create an article about anything as long as you have a citation. Anyone with what's called an IQ token is a stakeholder in the Everpedia network. They've been around for years and years, kind of using this blockchain-based encyclopedia, Wikipedia system. So it's very interesting. I actually like Everpedia a lot. I find that they have a lot more crypto-centric articles, because it's a lot of people who are in the crypto space, so they're all writing about this stuff. So I find that I often get more in-depth knowledge there than I do on Wikipedia. But Wikipedia, it's still pretty great. But I'll throw to you, Zach, for your thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to mention, like, this is also sort of happening against a larger, I guess, backdrop of like crypto backlash within the Wikipedia community. I think like the day before, there was this grand debate as to whether or not Wikipedia should be accepting cryptocurrency for donations, with a lot of people citing the environmental costs of proof of work consensus algorithms as being something that is against the ethos of what Wikipedia is trying to accomplish. So there's these sort of weird mainstream tech backlash. Crypto bros are a problem. The technology itself is toxic to the environment, and we shouldn't be supporting it in any way, shape, or form. So there's sort of like this. There's multiple sort of conversations that are unfolding among this particular online niche that are actually quite interesting to watch unfold, because you're right. It's sort of like a proto DAO, right? Where everyone can voice their opinions and you see it sort of play out in real time. So the fact that these two things are being debated at the same time, speaks to this broader moment of crypto backlash that I think people are feeling quite sharply. All right, who am I tossing to for Ethereum Max? Raise your hand. Who's doing it? Jen, yours.
That would be me. All right. So Kim Kardashian, Floyd Mayweather, and some other celebrities are being sued in a class action lawsuit for promoting Ethereum Max. The complaint says the influencers caused investors to purchase losing investments at inflated prices. So I think we spoke about it on the show, and it's so funny, David, because you were on the show when we spoke about it. So it's great to have you back for this story. When Kim posted on her Instagram stories, showing Ethereum Max, and she used the hashtag ad. And at that time we said, oh, maybe this is going to be okay because she's told her followers that this is an advertisement. And we'll wait and see how this pans out. Now we have this class action lawsuit against Kim and Floyd and other people who promoted Ethereum Max on social media. I know you've been following this. What do you think when you read about this class action lawsuit? Does it have legs?
Yeah. So the first thing to be very clear about here is that this is a civil action. This is not a regulatory action. The regulatory action, if it comes, will be down the road when you have the SEC come after them for touting or whatever it is. And in that case, it seems more likely that the fact that she put a little 3-letter hashtag AD ad might protect her a little bit more. The civil trial is going to have perhaps looser standards for evidence. Just to provide some background that is easy to drop out here, Kim Kardashian charges on the order of like $200,000 to $300,000 just for
it's up to $1 million
post to her for her stories, right? You get an actual Instagram post, that's going to be $1 million or more. But just the stories that are kind of ephemeral, those are like $200,000, $300,000, somewhere in there. And the person or persons who what we know about the people behind Ethereum Max, it doesn't necessarily suggest that they actually had the liquidity to pay that upfront. And so one of the big questions here for me is whether it was actually an ad, or whether maybe it was something that she did as a favor for a friend, and then she put that hashtag ad up there as some sort of post facto protection. So hopefully discovery of the civil trial is going to try and determine whether there was an actual payment made to her for an ad. Because based on what I have seen in terms of her relationship with the actual founders of this project, there may be some reason to believe that there is something that in some way resembles a criminal conspiracy happening here. And I'm phrasing that very carefully, but it is something
I wasn't
that
expecting
I hope
this to come out in this segment.
Yeah. So basically the question is, was this an actual ad, or was this something that Kim Kardashian framed as an ad as a way to cover up something else? So that's what's on my mind right now. But I saw Naomi's hand go up.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about this. So first of all, I think it's really dumb for people to be suing someone because they bought a token that went down. You know, you all should be doing more research and not buying things, and tokens go up and down, and these are things that are publicly tradable on free markets, and the price goes up and down according to rules of supply and demand. So it's really dumb to sue someone because you lost money and you're like, you should make up the difference because I bought at a certain price and it went. Like, it's the dumbest thing in the world. So I'll just say that. And I think this whole idea of like demonizing monetization, like someone, if they're paid for something, like it's this bad thing, and like it's, you know, I really dislike that whole narrative. I think it's totally fine for people to be paid to promote things. People do it all the time. You see all these ads for skincare products. You know, you really think that those actresses are using that skincare product, but they're still advertising it. That's literally their job description. That's how they make their money. On the other side of things, I do think it is completely ethically reprehensible for people like Kim Kardashian to be out there pumping these things that they know their audience doesn't quite understand, and that they could lose money in. You know, I think it's really bad when people do that, and you should stop doing that because you're hurting a lot of people. But it's just a question of like, is this a situation for the government to come in and like start suing people and say like, you advertise this thing? I don't think it is. I think that it's ethically bad and people should be shamed for pumping bad projects or whatnot. And I don't think that people should have the right, when they buy a bad product, to then come back and say, well, Kim Kardashian told me that it was a great product and she's the arbiter of truth, and I really trust her opinion because she's such a crypto expert. Like, no, Kim Kardashian was never a crypto expert. And if you bought this token on her word, then you're an idiot and you don't deserve to get into money in a lawsuit. So, I mean, just my two Satoshis there. Things like this kind of bother me. Like, I don't do paid promotions on my channel, but I definitely don't hold it against anyone who does, because it's the way that people can make money and actually create content that's sustainable. Some people only choose products that they themselves specifically use, but they just happen to get paid for it. I think that's fine, each to their own. I think that it's on the individual to be doing research into all of this stuff, digging in a little bit deeper. And it's on the content creators to not be scumbags and to be choosing projects that they actually think are worthwhile and not be misleading their audience, because their audience puts a lot of trust in them. So I think it's a two-way street there. But I'll throw it back to the group.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. I wanted to clarify one thing real quick, which is that Kim Kardashian is named in this lawsuit. So are Floyd Mayweather and Paul Pierce. And at least in my memory of the post that happened at the time, Mayweather and Pierce did not clarify that they were doing a paid promotion. That's one of the key things here. So if you don't say you're doing a paid promotion, what your audience is going to assume is that this is something you actually believe in, and that you're giving it a personal endorsement based on your own expertise. And so that's a different level of danger than even a little hashtag ad. I think goes a long way versus nothing at all. And Jen, you maybe want to wrap us up, or?
I know we have to wrap up, but I just want to say quickly, the hashtag ad, I believe, I stand to be corrected, the hashtag ad rule was born out of the Fire Festival debacle. And so it will be interesting to see how they debate this hashtag ad when it relates to crypto projects, because it was born to, let people know this is a paid advertisement and do your own research, as the people who attended Fire Festival learned the hard way. But Zach, I'll toss it off to you.
All right. Shout out to Ja Rule, Fire Festival. Good times. All right. We're going to wrap it there. That's it for the hash today. We'll be back for the Friday show tomorrow. David Morris was here today. Jen Sanasi was here today. Naomi Brockwell was here today.
And I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And David's going to be back tomorrow. And
We'll
Control's here. Teresa,
physically and in spirit.
Everybody's
here for you.
It's a party.
Audience.
That's
We're
right.
Here for you.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks for tuning in to CoinDesk TV. We'll catch you again soon. And hey, have a great day. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Pledit, for saying something I agreed with today in the chat. More of that. Excellent.
Bye, everyone in the chat.
Bye, chat.